Yeah, and it's starting to be more and more. Even just recently, we've been moving a lot more cases. We haven't gotten the reports yet, so I don't know exactly where they're going, but something's picking up.
There's this point now that's been really cool, because when we first started, it was Colin and I in Northern California, like hitting the pavement day in, day out. We'd distill, find the nicest pair of clothes we could, and go hit the streets in downtown Napa, the valleys. Then we eventually hit up like Sonoma and different parts of like the Bay Area. And it was like, when you saw a bottle on the bar, it was like our work. That was like our landing, you know what I mean? Like that was really the accomplishment. But we're getting to the point now that we're actually starting to see some bottles that we've never even stepped foot in, you know, where I get a text message from my friend saying like, hey man, we're at this bar in God knows where, you know, Bay Area or Southern California, and and they snap me a picture of our bottle. I'm like, dude, our bottle's actually gaining the traction now, and that's really, I think, what's more rewarding. Yeah.
Well, excellent. I mean, something, you know, that you said about us, you know, getting into basically random places now that we've never stepped foot in. One of the coolest moments that happened to me in the last couple of weeks is my friend Daniel Dempster, who was my freshman year roommate in college, called me in Mission Viejo and just said he saw a random person on the street in Mission Viejo. And I don't know many people down there.
My dad lives there. My parents, it's probably my dad. He's an old guy about my size, yeah, with an LNU shirt. Yeah, that was my pops, man.
Oh, right on.
100%
yeah.
My dad.
Well, now we know who it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, damn, I thought it was special.
Well, it's a small world, at least.
It is.
Which you really hope that you're going to keep hearing these stories, people start seeing you. And then, and you know, in the world of marketing, then people start to believe they saw you.
Yeah.
And you'll say, oh yeah, I saw your ad in such a magazine. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. And then you'll talk to each other, we don't have an ad in that magazine, do we? No, we don't. But you know, people think they saw it.
I think somebody, when we were in Fresno this weekend, said something like that. We're like, I saw you in such and such magazine. I was like, oh, and I kind of went along with it, but I was like, there's no way in hell we were.
No, not even close. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, because we're just sitting there like, oh, really? That's awesome. Wow. And I mean, you cannot put cold water on her fire. I mean, she was just red hot, so excited to meet us. And I mean, this is a Fresno like home and garden show. So I mean, these guys, I don't know what they're doing on the weekends. I love them to death, but man, they come up racing up to your booth. Like, I've been dying to see you. It took me all day to find your booth. I mean, you're not going to just splash them. You know, put that fire out. They're awesome. Yeah.
Well, funny thing about the Fresno home show is, of all places that we'd get excited to go to, would you expect it would be the Fresno home show?
Fresno home show, baby. It's like, it's like, I don't know.
Things are rocking in Fresno.
Well, exactly.
100%. We are the American dry gin of Fresno, California.
Yeah. No, we've just been blowing up the Total Wine there. They're pulling in more cases. We probably served how many samples that weekend?
Oh, a couple thousand at least. I mean,
yeah,
we ran out of cups 3 times. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? It was crazy.
Buy 500 cups and they're gone in a few hours. It's like,
yeah,
whoa.
No, what's really kind of cool about what I see a lot more like in that middle America, you know, Central Valley, California, or maybe Central Coast, is like the loyalty if they trust you. You know what I mean? Like in the Bay Area, it's really like the rat race. Southern California is the same way, where everyone's just trying to either cut each other, cut corners, or they're trying to make it, and so they're so focused on this. But you get to a place like Fresno, and you don't think that people are going to like your brand. You're not from Fresno. You weren't born and bred there, but for whatever reason, they trust us. They really believe in what we're doing. So when they say they're going to go buy a bottle of Total Wine, or they want to send you a picture of them drinking this bottle for a free shirt, they do it. They're actually like people of their word. And so when I go to Fresno, not only do we have great like contacts down there, but it's really like a fun time to feel trusted again. Like, you're the gin down there. People come to the home show, oh my God, you're back. You know, we trust you. Or, you know, they just say like how much they love our product. And yeah, it really, shines through.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny, for instance, remember that guy? I feel like in LA or San Francisco, if somebody came up and they're super excited about you, like, oh, I'm going to go buy the bottle, whatever. And he actually went out and he texted me within 2 hours that he'd been to the Total Wine, bought that bottle with some Fever Tree tonic, because that's what we told him to buy. He's like, I'm going to go buy this. And I bet that's going to be a guy who's going to be drinking us regularly for a long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said, like so many people who try our gin, I'm not a gin drinker. but I like this.
Oh yeah, that's right. Loch Union. It's not that bad.
No, it's become a joke between us because we get almost verbatim from so many people. It's, I'm not a gin drinker, but it's not that bad, or but I like this.
Yeah.
And I think that's the balance that we've tried to hit with this, is be something that is not just a gin enthusiast gin, but also a gin that appeals to a broader, demographic.
Well, and you're hitting places that the non-enthusiast is going. The Fresno Home Show. This is not a spirits convention. And I think too many people go back to college. They go back to that hangover. Or they go back to that rotten $4 gin that they got. And they got exactly what they paid for, but that's their whole point of reference.
That was something that I saw with Canadian Club that they did a good job with. I did this paper when I went to college, and it was this really cool English class because they said, you need to dissect an ad, basically. At that point I was really into like advertising and marketing and stuff. And I came across a Canadian Club ad from the mid 2000s, I think. And basically it was like this really brash nowadays, we'll put it that way. But it said like, your dad went out drinking with the boys, and it said and when they went out, they were drinking CNC and lime and soda, and they were hanging out, they were getting girls' numbers, they were partying, this and that, kind of reminiscing on the old days. And then right at the bottom, the tagline said, "Damn right your dad drank it." And I thought that was like the coolest. I mean, whoever thought of that was an absolute genius, because we all know Canadian Club's grandpa's whiskey. No one drinks Canadian Club, but how do they revitalize themselves in the 21st century? They acknowledge what they are, and they excel on it by making light of the fact, but still gaining interest among millennials and things. So here's a gin brand like us, who the awards speak for themselves. The spirit's good, the bottle's beautiful, but how do we captivate people? You know what I mean? Do we have to go to these shows and pour to the masses for people to really kind of gain our confidence and trust? Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to do that forever. But there has to come to a point where there has to be just recognition of who we are by someone's standards. And then we can be eventually grandpa's gin, the new standard of grandpa's gin,
Yeah.
Everyone's into Gordon's, or whatever. That's the high school rock gut, stuff. These old school brands that are selling to the masses. And we have to convert people every time. It's the joke when the home show, I am from the Ministry of Gin and I'm here to convert you on gin. And that's kind of how we do it.
Who came up with that?
I did. Because we're in Fresno.
That's a good one.
It's there's some tie to religion there, and I have family there. They're dairy farmer, Dutch dairy, Christian, the whole stereotype,
Yeah.
So I just thought it'd be funny just to go in there and be like, oh well, no, I'm here to convert you to the great word of gin. And it was so great. It was so much fun. People could really get captivated.
Well, how many times did somebody come up to our booth and be like, "Oh, is that gin?" And be like, "No."
Yeah.
And then we'd be like, "All right, settle down.
Yeah.
Try this." And be like, "Oh,
absolutely,
it's not that bad."
Especially the crazy thing is, it really is a compliment from them.
No, seriously.
You're trying to accept that when people say, "Yeah, it's not that bad."
No, it's almost the best compliment a non-drinker. It is the best compliment a non-drinker can give us, because they think it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing with gin and with wine and with everything else, is the really bad gins are really bad, but the really good gins are really good.
Absolutely.
And that's where we want to be.
We're 20% of the
where we
market.
are.
I mean, I can throw out some number at you, but we're not as popular as whiskey, right? If we were a whiskey brand right now, we would be killing it, because it's so much wider of a market here in the United States, opposed to the UK, where if you're a gin brand, you're killing it right now. Mm-hmm. You are just as hot as whiskey is in America. So that's kind of the big challenge, is we're doing what we're doing with gin, the most minority beverage out there. Vodka even sells more than gin. So I'm really proud of the fact that we are able to have such a good product for such a small demographic that it blows people's minds in the other 80% of the drinking populace. I think that's really the biggest compliment that I can give to ourselves, is that we're able to go to people that go, "Oh man, I got drunk off that in high school." They're like, "Oh, I'm never gonna drink that again," and they drink it. They go, "You know what? thank you for showing me something that season, for sure.
Yeah, and even more than that, the fact that gin isn't whiskey gives us the opportunity to actually shape what the market thinks of gin.
Yeah.
You know, if we actually make it in this industry and get there.
Well, I think that's one advantage you have to think about, is that like when people think about tequila or whiskey, they actually have a more defined thought. And when they think about gin, they remember not liking it or not drinking it, but they don't really remember why or what it is. And so you're kind of, you kind of get to define it for people and say, well, this is what gin is. I don't know what you drank in the past, but this is what gin is.
Absolutely.
Exactly, and the comparison when they try that next to another gin. Zach, I think, told me this story. I know it's Zach, actually, at the Continental, where one of the bartenders there was like, "Oh, this tastes just like," I think they said Tanqueray or beef.
Well, it was Bombay. Because
Bombay.
of the paper. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then Zach didn't say anything. He's just like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And he brought out a shot of Bombay, poured it next to it, and then poured this. And he's like, "I'm sorry, this is not anything alike."
Yeah,
and I think that's where, you know, what we've done well is we've made something that's obviously recognizable as gin, but it's more, well, it's better.
It's elevated.
It's elevated, yeah.
Something that I think a lot of the brands, especially here, like that I'm finding is that gin is almost like the modern day IPA, where there's beautiful IPAs out there that are hoppy but yet citrusy, malty, delicious. Like I really do like a good IPA that's classic to the name. But then you have like these like triple hop, extreme, you know, and most of the industry now with gin is like just over your head, like hitting you with a hammer to make you want to like gin. I mean, no one's going to do that. No one is going to like your product if you keep shoving it down your throat. And I'm finding that a lot when I'm tasting a lot of other, you know, we'll call it competitor gins, or we'll call it other gins in our industry, is that there is something so obvious to their gin that it almost makes it unattractive to me. Then I drink something else that somewhat like ours, where there's balance to it. There's something that is more than juniper, but not over the top as well. There's this balance to it that I really do enjoy, and that's something that is missing in our industry too. So I'm really glad that we're able to like achieve that with our gin for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. That is almost the first thing I say to people, is that this is subtle, balanced. Subtlety is something that's very often, you know, missed in our industry right now. And you can draw the parallel to craft beer, where it's, like you said, triple IPA this, you know, imperial something that. And, you know, if you're trying to be interesting just because the flavor profile of your gin or whiskey or whatever else is just extreme, you know, that's not a very elegant way to go about doing things.
Yeah.
I'd rather be remembered for making a very good gin that was subtle.
Yeah, and something that can go well with any cocktail as well. I mean, gin is supposed to be drank with cocktails. I don't know anybody besides the thousands of people that we poured at the Fresno Home Show that have drank gin neat, because we had to give it to them neat. You know what I mean? There was like no one that I know personally that goes, "Yeah, I'll just have gin neat." Maybe besides you.
I do drink my gin neat.
You do.
I'm just saying.
I personally don't. Like I need a little vessel to kind of carry me. So if it's the gin and tonic, if it's the martini, the Negroni, the gimlet, we can go all night. But that's what's really nice about making a gin like this, was that it was engineered to be in a cocktail. It plays well with so many other ingredients that you can't really fail with a balanced gin, because balance means both sides, right? Like in the cellar, when I'm making whiskey, it's the same way. Like I would rather have two things clash together than separate. And that's what balance is. Even if it means in the middle, you have one and the other. And that's what's really nice about gin, is that I want a really bitter drink, like a Negroni. Okay, I would like to have the bitterness of the Campari, but maybe that'll make the gin more aromatic because of the palate. Okay, great. Martinis, they have their other complexes. Same with citrusy cocktails. So that's kind of what we were kind of aiming for with gin, was like, I don't want you to just taste the gin. I want it to to drink a cocktail. That's why we're adding all these beautiful ingredients, especially now with all the bartenders in the Bay Area and all the shrubs and batches. I don't even know what it all means, but it's all tasty.
That's true. But think about this. We were able to get a bunch of people who aren't gin drinkers to like drinking room temperature neat gin.
Yeah, super.
I mean, that's just throwing that out there.
Super true.
Even if they wouldn't necessarily drink it that way.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And again, you didn't have to hide it in something. You didn't have to put it in a cocktail to make it drinkable.
Yeah.
It's, I compare it like fish. Not really a big fish fan, but there's certain recipes where you cover it with enough things. Sure, I like fish. Cover it with a hollandaise sauce. Sure. But at the end of it, like, I like hollandaise sauce over some kind of substance that carries it.
Yeah,
Totally true. You're making gin. Well, I think when I put this together, probably ended up being like 10 seconds of us clearly having a conversation and then fading in. So like right now, I'll probably mute this part of the conversation and then I'll turn to the camera and agree like, hey, we're in the middle of a conversation, but want to talk to you about cocktails.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It looks like we've been hanging out like we have.
Oh yeah, I mean that became absolutely. I'm almost like, hey, let's do another take because that was so much fun. You know what I mean? I didn't know this was the real thing.
It's all on camera, so I'll play with editing and see what I can.
I'm really glad you had that on without telling us.
And just my own trick, a comfort level.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, because that's the best way to do this.
Yeah.
Unless you're with somebody who's done 1,000 interviews in their life and they're used to it. And honestly, I get really comfortable. It's like public speaking in a way. Getting up and starting is the hardest thing, but once you actually start speaking, it's really easy. It's getting into that flow.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just keep going, and I may edit this and try to do some fade in and fade out to include some of the conversation.
Sure.
100%. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
And no, we can talk about cocktails and what should we use this for, and recommendations from Loch Union.
Oh man, the bee's knees, man. See, I didn't even hesitate with that one. Like, it's funny when I first started like drinking bee's knees, I was kind of like, oh, this is really crafty. I'm very much at home. Very simple. 3 ingredients and that's it. We're getting done double distilling every day. The last thing I want to do is act like a mixologist at my own house in my pajamas. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go home and I want to have like 3 ingredients. 3 cocktails. Well, sometimes like 3 cocktails. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like maybe one goes down the other, right? Thankfully, I always forget it. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, like my neighbor is a beekeeper, and she has honey, and I get honey all the time. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, the only thing I have to provide now is lemons. Well, okay, yeah. So boom, boom, boom. I'm making this, and at home, I'm like, man, there's my 3 ingredients. Maybe a little club soda if I'm a volumizer, and boom, like I have sweet, sour, gin. Oh man, it's the best.
Balance. I actually do 4 ingredients with it's not quite the bee's knees anymore, but we call it the beekeeper. I'm sure I made you one of those in the past where it's the bee's knees with just a couple drops of a really peaty whiskey on top.
You always do the peaty whiskey.
Yeah, and it just completely changes that drink. It's really interesting. And I don't know what possessed me to do this originally. I was at the Library Bar in San Francisco, right next to Bourbon and Branch, and I got one of their gimlets there, which is really good gimlet. And I was like, give me a shot of Ardbeg 10. Give me a shot of Ardbeg 10. And I just took it, and I took a spoon and just poured it on top, like just a little bit. And it's a completely different drink.
Yeah. Yeah, you've done that a lot. It's really changed like kind of the complex of what we know cocktails to be. Like that's kind of like we were talking about with gin, and like I kind of like put them in the 3 categories, right? Like you have like the bitter, you have the citrus, and then you have like the martini, right? Like that's usually the 3s. But then all of a sudden you add like 1 extra ingredient, like gin and tonic and a dash of bitters. Boom! All of a sudden a new drink. The bee's knees with a little shot of Saint Germain. Boom! Way different cocktail, or Ardbeg in this situation, and it becomes your own, right? That's what I really like about knowing your ingredients and knowing like a gin like this, where it's like, okay, like I don't ever have to worry about what I put in this. Like I've had gins that they smell like lemon cleaner, and all of a sudden, like with a gin and tonic, gorgeous. Oh my god, this is a spring summer delight. But then I'm trying to make like a Negroni with this, or trying to make a martini with this, or my bee's knees, and it's like, no, this is pledge. Like making it and then just just absolutely just killing it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I tell people is like, this should be in every back bar that anyone ever has, from the house to the bar. Because I know that I have friends that like gin, and people usually have friends that like gin or something, you know, to drink at their house. So that's what I really like about having multiple things. Like, I don't drink rum at my house, but I have a bottle just in case someone wants a rum and coke or a rum something. So I like gin to be that kind of catalyst for whoever and whatever they want.
Well, and like we were talking about before, you know, this is something that you could give to a vodka drinker, and they like it just as well, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So when you're at home, for you, a bee's knees is that's a go-to type of drink.
100%. 100%.
Just quick, easy.
It's quick, easy, and it's like we just talked about. It's balanced, you know.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's the peanut butter and jelly in my life, you know. You get a lot of the sour, you get a lot of the sweet, you get a lot of the in between, and so the contrast is what makes it balanced. And so yeah, it's easy to make at home. Like I said, sometimes a splash of sparkling water if I want a full glass of something, and that's it. I don't really have too much trouble with that one for sure.
Well, I think with cocktails, you know, they can get so complicated, but they don't really need to. And you know, some of my favorite bartenders are the ones that can take a simple cocktail and elevate it. Like Anthony Attanasio or Michael Mina. Like, he's working with our stuff and just kills it.
Yeah.
And when he tells me the ingredients, it's just like 4 things.
Yeah, right.
Usually.
Here's the last word. I'm like, oh, that sounds like the most complicated cocktail ever.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's a couple ingredients, but he takes the time to know the ingredients. It's like a good chef.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about the new age mixologists, is that they're more chefs now than they are just the, you know, Ted Dansons of the 80s. You know, they're really working into their craft of, you know, can I cook this down? Can I render that? Can I mix this? Can I batch that? So when a customer comes in and goes, oh yeah, I've had an old fashioned, or I've had a last word before, but you have this one, and it's just like we just said, it's elevated. It's absolutely an absolute stunner.
Well, so you remember when Anthony brought out that spice box from Michael Mina and showed us all the spices that, well, they use in the food, but they also use in the cocktails. And, you know, like we talked about with our juniper that we use in this gin, the difference between that juniper and like average juniper, and the difference between whatever they're using and the average of whatever that botanical is just miles apart. Using the right ingredients is everything, in my opinion.
It really is. I mean, we were just talking about this earlier before we were on camera, where we always talk about gin, and you know, the most popular drink is obviously the gin and tonic. But something that we kind of like had a good time thinking about was like your cocktail is like 1 or 2 fingers gin, and the rest of it is tonic.
Yeah.
And people don't give 2 like pennies to care about the tonic that goes with it. And that's what blew my mind when I first started getting into this, was like, oh my God, this tastes pretty bitter. This tastes pretty too sweet. It tastes too artificial. Well, yeah, when you use like, you know, X tonic, it's going to taste like that. It doesn't matter how good your gin is. It's your 3/4 of your drink is garbage.
Yeah.
But if you use a decent tonic, then all of a sudden your drink becomes like the Michael Mina spices. Like, you're using better ingredients for it. And so it's always really important to choose, if you're going to use a good gin, use a good tonic. And then if you don't care, then obviously it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you know, one thing that's a problem in the States right now is we don't have a good selection of tonics, really.
Yeah.
And I have 1, maybe 2 that are readily available to me in the States that I like. But if you go to Spain, they have tonic lists. You go to Britain, they have tonic lists.
Crazy.
It's the same thing as like as many or more tonics as they have gins.
Yeah.
Because, like Gian was saying, it's generally you have more tonic than you have gin in that drink. And if you're talking about mixing and matching like flavor profiles, I mean, tonic is a very wide category in a sense. Like, people have only experienced most of the time in the States a very small cross section of what tonic can be.
And you're talking about a market where people often synonymously refer to tonic, sparkling water, club soda, and just use them all as if they're all the same thing.
Exactly, and it's kind of like we were talking about with gin, is people have this perception of what gin is, people kind of have this perception of what tonic is, and it can be so much more broad and complex and interesting.
100%. You know what makes the best gin and tonic in town, and here in Napa, is Angel. They make their own tonic.
100%. 100%.
Every time I go in there, whether it's to say hello or to have dinner, I mean, you know, obviously I love gin and I love gin and tonics, but like I get excited when I go to Angel because I know that I'm going to get homemade tonic with our gin and lime, and it is so dang good. And they spruce it up Spanish style. They got all sorts of little trucaments in there, and it's really cool because me, the three ingredient cocktail guy, or the three cocktail guy. That's gonna be like my new blog or something. The three cocktail guy, but my 3 ingredient cocktail, it gets absolutely just elevated because the guy makes it in house. There's a gin that's distilled. I think I did the math, like 8 miles away on the dot. That's pretty dang local. And then they use all the spruces, and all of a sudden, like, boom, there it is, like the best gin and tonic. And they go down so dang easy.
I mean,
man, so good.
yeah, I mean, I'm not just saying this to get on Angel's good graces, because they're great at conference. But it's probably the best gin and tonic I've ever had in my life. I'm not kidding. It's like so balanced.
Well, I mean, I think it's fascinating when we talk about people not knowing the difference between a gin or a whiskey. And now we're talking about distinguishing not just a gin, but a gin and tonic. And say, gin and tonic is a great drink. Yeah. But if you're going to do one, you probably ought to consider coming to Napa and going to Angel, because that's going to be something
100%.
special.
Yeah, I think that's what happens with a lot of people that ask me too, do you have a tasting room? No, I have 35 different tasting rooms in downtown Napa Valley that have a tasting room manager, aka a bartender, to pour a cocktail. That's what I tell people. That's my little catch line. But at the same time, like, that's where it's like, well, where do you think I should best drink? I go to a place that cares about their ingredients. Goose and Gander, St. Helena, they do everything. I think the mixologists spend more time in the kitchen than they do bartending.
And so.
Absolutely. That's where they spend most of their day. Angel with the homemade tonic. So just go somewhere that really cares about providing like the most authentic experience and drink in the valley, for sure.
But I mean, really, we're talking to people around the world. You're saying anywhere. If you're going to go out for a drink, go someplace where they care about their drinks.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it could be something really simple, like all the things we're talking about, a bee's knees, a gin and tonic, a gimlet even. Super simple. And you can get that at one place and it is garbage, and you get it someplace who really cares about what they're doing, and it is simple but beautiful.
100%.
So when you're at home, what are you going to make?
Gin and tonic. Or gin neat, but I'm a freak, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I think in fairness, though, we really ought to kind of say that we were talking earlier about like the Fremont Home Show, that 500 plus people left there with the consideration of maybe I could drink a gin neat.
Oh, it's more than that. Like, I'm serious. We touched like 2,000 people. The Fresno freaking Home Show.
Yeah.
Of all places, yeah.
And so, I mean, so for me, my first gin and tonic just a couple of years ago, and then then had yours, and I've got a bottle at home, and to be honest, I know Ilona likes to make cocktails, and she's got that sense. I just keep slowly sipping on my bottle.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no reason to mess with this. I might screw it up. So I'm just going to keep drinking it straight.
You drink it neat?
Yeah. It's just,
there it is. There it is.
Yes.
2 freaks and the 3 cocktail guy.
Well, but
but
all right, I'll give you a high five for that.
Thank you.
It's very funny.
it's just good. I mean, you just want to sit there and sip it.
Yeah.
And, enjoy the evening. I mean, I know if you've sat with Ilona ever, she has this saying about
I have.
sitting down and having a conversation with your drink. And that's kind of what you can do with these.
That's something that's kind of missing in a lot of the current kind of, I wouldn't say culture, but something is really bang for your buck these days, right? Like, look at the wine in Napa Valley. Like, they're trying to drop price a little bit just to get that one person to maybe buy that X dollar amount of bottle of wine, or pay for the fee and all that. And to me, it's like buying a really good pair of shoes or boots. I'm going to pay a little bit more money, and it's going to last longer. It's going to be durable. It's going to do what I asked it to, right? Same with a bottle of, we'll say, more premium beverage. If I'm going to buy that bottle of gin, then that for that amount of money, the quality is a little bit more than the next guy. But at the same time, like you said, you're going to pay more attention to it because it's more of a investment, we'll call it. You know what I mean? A nice leather belt, same way. Not the other cardboard ones that'll straight up snap in half on you in a week. Because then you got to buy 10 of those, right? I'm not trying to buy 10. I'm trying to buy one bottle of gin, one bottle of whiskey, one bottle of vodka, or whatever. That's what's kind of going on. Is like I would rather have someone say, you know what, I did spend that money and it was well worth it. That's something that's really missing a lot. You go to the grocery store and it's 45-cent bell peppers. Everything is just crud, right? But then you actually, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of ranting, but like chicken. Chicken's the same way. Like you buy grocery store chicken, it doesn't taste like anything. But then you actually like have a real chicken.
You're so right.
It tastes so much better, and it might be a little bit more money, and it might cost you just $1 or $2 more. But man, is it worth it? That's what's going on here.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we've said this before, and the ingredients that you put into something, it doesn't have to be all that complicated. And we only use 12 botanicals, well, 11 and a half, I say, because we use 2 different kinds of coriander, but whatever. We're not looking to make, use 50 different botanicals in this gin. It doesn't have to be that complicated. But there's a lot of effort that goes into selecting the best of everything that we do put in there.
Well, I heard you say earlier, and we heard some chefs say earlier, about there's this trend towards complicated.
Yes.
And the more ingredients, the better. And sometimes there's just nothing more fantastic than something simple, a few ingredients, it's done well, and you just enjoy it. I don't have to go to college to learn how to make my drink.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just use a good ingredient,
And just care. I think that's the biggest one. I was just reading this article with like Thomas Keller, obviously the chef of the world, of Napa, especially, Yountville, all that. But like, it was a really cool, interesting, because it's on the same topic. Is like, you're going to talk to a guy that grows carrots and doesn't really care. But then you talk to the guy who really understands the soil, that really cares about carrots, right? That's the guy you want to go talk to when you buy carrots. And he was mentioning as well, back in our grandfather's times, they had to go to the meat market, then they had to go to the vegetable produce guy, then they had to go, the milkman delivered the milk. Everything was so much more cared for back in the day, and they really cared about where that meat came from and this and that. That's kind of like what I like about having this gin, is basically, like, I want you to know where it came from. And we spent a year and a half developing the recipe with the freshest, the best ingredients you can find in the entire world, from every corner of the world. Come into our office, you'll see the map with all the botanicals laid out, because we had to pick. It was Monterey juniper better than the Baltics? Was this type of Damiana from this type of part of Mexico better than the other? We had to distill that over and over and over again to make sure that whatever went into this was well thought of, And so now when people taste the gin, I hope that when they taste it, it's, these guys thought about this.
Yeah.
It's really, really well done, but also well thought of because they care.
Well, I mean, talking about the recipe development process, it took us, not kidding, about 500 test distillations to get to the recipe that we use in that bottle.
Yeah.
And we worked with some of the best people in this industry for sourcing botanicals. Well, T.C. Bauer for perfuming.
Seriously.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, not overly complicated if you just look at it by what's in there, but the end product is elevated.
Well,
It's definitely better.
We don't want to take away from the fact that Thomas Keller, he can give me the list of ingredients, but it doesn't mean we're eating the same dish.
I cannot make what Thomas Keller makes in my kitchen.
Yeah.
No, it's just not going to happen. One thing I was just thinking as you're talking, that maybe the perk or the benefit of the whole craft distillation market nowadays is that there is an attention to something better than your grandpa's $5 gin, or that gin that got you a hangover. Now people are interested in something that might be American made, but made in the local distillery or made special. We're just more aware.
Well, I mean, people are definitely interested in it, but people also don't really trust the industry all that much. I think you've talked about this quite a lot, is that people want to drink really good stuff, but do they really know that what they're getting is what they say that it is?
Well, and the market's done that to itself. I mean, I think
Yeah.
you and I talked about, some of these craft beers that we find out later on are actually being made by the big, parent companies.
Anheuser-Busch, or whoever it is. Our industry is the same way. Worse even. You look at whiskey in Kentucky, and you say, "Oh, I'm buying this really cool batch craft XYZ, bourbon from Kentucky," and almost like wine. You look in the back, and you got to see if it's produced and bottled by X, Y,
Does
and
it
Z.
say Indiana?
Yeah. Why does it say Indiana? Why does it say it's distilled by this Buffalo Trace? It's like, hey, I thought I was buying this once in a lifetime experience of bourbon And most of the time you're not. And gin's starting to be the same way. And something that I can say about gin, unlike another kind of beverage, is that the creative process is a lot like being a chef. You have to really kind of feel the ingredients. You have to say like what your palate really kind of lends to. If I use Cuba berry, some other person's going to use pink peppercorn, or they're going to use Thai chilies to achieve the same kind of pepperiness, spiciness in the gin that lends itself to it. Regardless of how much you use or where you get it from, that's their interpretation of what they think gin is. So to give the benefit of the doubt to gin, I like the fact that a lot of guys are going out there and putting their hearts out and their passion out, saying this is what I think gin is. But it's starting to be a little different, where it's like, well, maybe if I infuse this little oil in here, or if I just have someone else distill it for me and sell it, it's mine. And that's kind of where our gray area in our industry is kind of lying.
I mean, I really think that the big problem in the distilling industry in general is the fact that most of the juice is sourced. Like the brewing industry is a little bit different. Craft brewing is different now because the big guys have been able to come in and buy a lot of those companies up. But early on in the craft, well, even later on, like when I was, starting to drink craft beer, if you went and picked a bottle of beer off the shelf and you said, oh, this is whatever brewery, 9 times out of 10, maybe more, that there was an actual brewery behind it, that had that name. Now with whiskey and gin, even, you go and you pick some bottle off the shelf, and more often than not, it's made at one of 3 distilleries in this country. It's seriously, it's crazy. And I think, talking about people not trusting this industry is, well, we're not giving them genuine products. You have branding firms out there that are masquerading as distilleries. And I really just hope that this industry cares that we actually make our own juice, that we took 3 years to build the distillery that we produced this in, and all the money that we had and effort that we had to put in getting up to that point. I mean, honestly, I know we'd be moving more cases now if we just paid somebody to make our juice and put it on the market, because we could put all our money behind marketing, all of it.
100%. And that's what's kind of cool about being, transparent. Like we are. That's what I love about going to these home shows we're talking about. Go to Fresno and people are like, oh, really? You're a distiller? Yeah, come and see me. I'm usually in overalls with a hoodie on, distilling, coopering, doing something distilling-esque. If it's making whiskey, gin, brandy, we are distilling 110% of the time in that distillery. So that's what I really like about people coming in and saying, like, I don't believe them. Fine. Come on in. I'd be more than happy to show you how we do it. And you can taste at our place to say, okay, this is what's going on. These guys should be trusted. These guys are doing something that is authentic. That's what's been nice about having experience in the alcohol industry. Coming from wine, is integrity is everything. You're talking about the earth. You're talking about the winemaking method. It is so much more vulnerable to mess up in winemaking. So when you have a bottle of wine in the winery, there was a lot of process to get there. There was a lot of trust that you had to get to a winemaker to say, I spent my life's work doing this 750 milliliter bottle. Please try it and please support me. And all the people that it took. That's what I liked about the transparency. But what if that winery was like, oh yeah, I'm a really cool winery, but my juice comes from Lodi or something, and I'm a Napa winery. Then all of a sudden, no one's going to trust you. So that's what I like about the authenticity of what we're doing,
But the challenge that we have is to educate people that we actually are doing it right, and cutting through all the other people who have their contrived stories is our challenge. Mm-hmm. So we need to figure out how to do that. Yeah. And I think we're doing a good job of it right now, but we're not by no means done. It's kind of interesting. I know we've talked about the Fresno Home Show a lot, but it was interesting to actually have people who you wouldn't think of as hardcore booze enthusiasts come up and say, do you actually make that? Yeah. And that happens several times there.
Well, it certainly speaks to what you said before, that people are starting to be aware.
Yeah.
And maybe cynically aware. They may have come to realize that nothing is unique. We pick up a generic at the store and we're like, well, who really made it? We assume that. And so, but it's giving you a chance to have that voice. I think even now talking, here, as these videos and podcasts and recordings get out there with you guys, they're going to keep hearing it. And every time they hear the two of you, it's the same story.
Yeah.
And now your challenge is, if you decide to go with a marketing firm at some point in time, is how do they amplify your voice but not change it? And not start tweaking your story to where someone else says, that's not the story I heard from John when we were together.
It's something that I'm very, very sensitive to when we're working with a PR firm or whatever, is we are who we are.
Yeah.
We are not going to change who we are because you think it'd be easier to get us out on the market right now.
It's been interesting that you say that, because we do work with, and have worked in the past with, PR firms, marketing and all that. And what's really interesting is, like, we have never budged on authenticity that way. They always come up and everyone always asks you, like, who do you want to be? Like, oh, an astronaut, obviously. But the bigger part is, who do you want to be? Do you want to be this, like, young, hip, nerdy, brand that's just full of young guys who are really smart and making a really good package, and their gin is just out of control? Oh, okay, then they're going to box you up and they're going to put a nice little wrapper on you, hand it to the customer and go, you should buy this because they are, young, hip, nerdy little guys making gin. Or are you going to be like, elegant, refined? Every time you go out, you're in a suit and you're taking elegant, super high def pictures and, oh, look at our lives. No, like, we are who we are. And what's really cool about the team is that everyone has their own little taste and flavor of how this distillery came about. If, let's say, Colin was in one room and I was in the other, and the rest of us were, in each of the rooms, and one person were to come in and ask the question, like, oh, what do you think of the distillery? How did it come to be? Everyone would have the baseline same story with their own flavor with it. And I think that's what's really special about us. No one, put me in a dark room and put a bag over my head and said, like, you have to say that we are transparent, we have to be this, and we have to be that, or else, like, we're not gonna sell any gin. We are who we are, and we don't take any compromise.
Yeah, and something that really pisses me off is, like, who do you want to be like? And they'll give some name of some other distillery. It's like, they're successful. I was like, that's great that they're successful, but we're not them.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, the biggest asset that we have is that we are real, and we don't compromise about that.
Well, I think even turn it all back to what we started talking about, making cocktails. That when I'm at home making my bee's knees or my gin and tonic, that even though I have a recipe, I Googled it, I saw someone make it. At the end, it's still mine. Mm-hmm. It's still something I made. I made it at home, and people around me know they're probably getting the percentages wrong. But I like the flavor, and it's authentic to me. And you guys don't have to be like anybody else, because at the end, this is what you created, and you want to know this is your creation. That in a cookie cutter world where I want to download how to launch my own business, you couldn't do that, and you didn't do that.
No, but what a platform we built, though. I think that's the beautiful part about this distillery, is that the way we do it can be replicated. It's not easy, but it can be replicated. I mean, Colin built a state-of-the-art facility with almost no engineering background, but yet he's developed a platform for a distillery to say, this is the most efficient, cost-effective, and bona fide true way and traditional way of doing it, right? That's what is missing, is a lot of that real authenticity. Why maybe some winemakers from the new world look to the old world to look for that really nice nostalgia. The way that we kind of looked at Scotland, we looked at Japan, and we looked at Kentucky and said, okay, like, what do we like and dislike about them? I really like the flavor of this. I really like the methods used there. And you took all of that and you just funneled it into a distillery that now we can make bona fide whiskey, single malt way. We can make gin of every style. We can make, gosh, I mean, the list goes on.
Everything but vodka.
Anything but vodka. But that's what's really cool about what we do, is that we can be who we want to be at no cost to integrity or real image, but it can be replicated if you're willing to do it the right way.
Well, I'm willing to put the money up front. I mean, it's a big investment to get into it in the way that we have. And, yes, we are a craft distillery, but we're not, looking to stay just in Napa. I want to grow this to be all over California, all over the United States, and make it international. And we have, like you're talking about, building a platform. We aren't there yet, but with what we have right now, we can absolutely grow to get there.
Yeah, there's real science behind this, so that, for you guys, it's not that you're going to wonder, what are we going to make this year? whether you're making it here or across the country, you're gonna make Loch Union, you know, American gin,
Yeah.
and you've nailed it.
Yeah.
And so,
Thank you.
I think, you know, hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation we've had, and it's like most good conversations, most good drinks. It goes where you didn't expect it to go, it ends where you didn't expect to end, but you enjoyed the time. Hey, I mean, this stuff's available throughout California.
Yeah, California right now. You can get it online in about 15 states.
Okay.
Because their laws in other states don't allow us to ship spirits there.
Good old
But as I said, you know, we want to conquer California, but then the rest of the country is ours after that.
And something that's important that I'll always add too is that Napa Valley is our home. I think
Yes.
that's what's been really cool. Like telling people of Fresno that if you want to make it in Napa, you got to be good. You know, look at every restaurant, look at every winery, look at every single thing in Napa that's ever been done.
Great
The
point.
only people that make it are the best. And that's something that I'm really proud of having 22 awards as of yesterday for our gins.
In 8 months.
In 8 months. We are on front cover of Napa Valley Life. People are starting to really look and say, okay, I think these guys are going to make it. And let's get behind a spirits brand. What Montelena and the rest of the wineries did in the 70s, maybe we can reconstruct that to be somewhat of a thing in Napa with the spirits, style, where we're taking over the culture of spirits in a place that took over the culture of wine. I think that to me would be a legacy that would be like in stone here in Napa.
Well, and I think that's why we identify with Napa so much. Absolutely. You know, none of us besides Jeff are from Napa. We all quit some other thing that we were doing in our lives to come here and be a part of this and make Napa our home.
Yeah.
And so if we can follow in that tradition, my gosh, that nothing could be better.
100%.
So what's the website for people to check out?
LochUnion.com, Instagram, Loch and Union. At Loch Union. Yeah.
We'll keep an eye out for these guys. I think you're going to see them all over the place. You're going to keep seeing stories, and I mean, we're 8 months in. This is pretty exciting, so keep your eyes on it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.